A damning report accuses Nigeria of abuses in its crackdown on the armed group Boko Haram. How damaging are these allegations if true? And should the government be working towards a dialogue with Boko Haram? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Hazem Sika. The tactics Nigeria's security forces are using to fight Boko Haram are just making the insurgency worse. That's what Amnesty International says in a report it released on Thursday. The report, titled "Nigeria Trapped in the Cycle of Violence," accuses the security forces of summary executions, torture and detention without trial. It also documents Boko Haram's atrocities, its systematic targeting of civilians. Amnesty International's investigation highlights instances where government forces have violated human rights with, quote, impunity in the name of fighting terror. The abuses include illegal executions and forced disappearances. Amnesty says that only a few of the hundreds of people security forces have detained have ever been formally charged. It also says the violence has created a climate of fear in Nigeria. The report warns that the security forces' brutal tactics could build support for Boko Haram beyond its extremist core. And it makes a series of recommendations to upgrade systems and improve training to help prevent future abuses. Lieutenant Colonel Sagir Musa is the spokesperson for the Joint Military Task Force in northeastern Nigeria. He says Amnesty's accusations are false.
We have denied these accusations. They are just mere allegations. The Joint Task Force here, we are here not as an army of occupation. We are not here to add to the problems of the society. We are here to help.
Amnesty International Secretary General told a group of journalists in Abuja that you can't protect people by abusing human rights or promote security by creating insecurity.
Overall, the report feels that the security forces are consistently operating outside the law. And our experience internationally is that this is not the way to counter terror. No crimes committed by Boko Haram, no human rights violations committed by Boko Haram can justify human rights violations by security forces. We cannot protect people by abusing human rights, and we cannot achieve security by creating insecurity.
Well, let's have a look now at what we know about the group. Boko Haram is a radical armed group based in Nigeria. It says it wants to wipe out any Western influence in the north of the country and create an Islamic state there. Recently, Boko Haram has bombed churches and other buildings, but its trademark tactic is to use gunmen on motorbikes to kill police, politicians, and anyone who criticizes them. So where is the rule of law in Nigeria? Well, to answer this question, we're joined by our three guests in Abuja. Tony Uranta, Executive Secretary of the National Summit Group. That's an organization promoting a national dialogue in Nigeria. In Glasgow, we have Hakeem Yusuf, a senior lecturer at the School of Law at the University of Strathclyde. And in Washington, D.C., Paul Lubeck, Nigeria expert at Johns Hopkins University. Good to have you all with us. Paul Lubeck in Washington, if I could start with you. What do you make of the findings of this report?
Well, first, I want to thank you for inviting me, and I also want to express my concern and condolences to all of the Nigerians that have lost their lives on both sides of the violence. I think the report is an indictment of the security forces. It's very detailed. It is information that is widespread among NGOs and civil rights and human rights groups in Nigeria. And it is a continuing problem that's been documented by other international human rights groups, Nigerian human rights groups. CLEAN, C-L-E-E-N, is a Nigerian human rights group that focuses on the police. And in this case, the joint task forces and the abuses of human rights among in the northern cities in response to an enormous violation of human rights on the part of Boko Haram.
Dr. Hakeem Yusuf, what do you make of the,
Yes.
the claims from this report, and what about their validity as well?
Thank you very much for inviting me to join you today. And I have been following the Boko Haram, the activities of the Jamaatul Dawat Walida Sunnah wa Jihad, otherwise known as Boko Haram, myself for the past couple of years with a lot of concern, first as a Nigerian and secondly as an academic who works around issues of transitional justice, criminal justice, with specific reference to West Africa and with particular concern for Nigeria. And that is why, for me, this is a very important report. It does validate, first, like Paul said, the other reports we've had from the media, from the NGOs, and it's a very thoroughgoing report. I think it's a report that is to be commended. Transparency, Amnesty International has done a very good job. And in terms of, in fact, my recent interviews and contacts with colleagues who have visited Nigeria and visited sites of these incidents in fact, a matter of weeks ago, they validate the general tenor of this report. I find them to be quite authentic. I have had reports on issues on Africa, on Nigeria in the past that I have taken exception to their authenticity. But in terms of the tenor of this one and the facts it has given, it is quite representative of what is going on there. It is so very sad. And as a Nigerian, as an expert on human rights, with particular concern for Nigeria and Africa, I am really at pains to see that this continuing situation is the case. It's unfortunately not unique to the northern part of the country in terms of just the same thing that Paul said, in terms of the attitude of government security forces, of the police, and their attitude, and the military, and their attitude to quelling what they perceive to be insurgencies or any incident of disorder as the government sees it. There's a continuing trend.
All right,
from the military days.
Let's get a view then from somebody inside Nigeria. Tony Uranta in Abuja. Do the findings of this report fit in with what you've seen there?
Well, it's interesting that Hakeem ended up by saying that these findings are not unique to the north of Nigeria or to the curling of the Boko Haram insurgency. Why I say that is because I do not approach this as an academic. It's not an intellectual exercise for me. I could sit down to talk about reports and reports. But the fact of the matter is that I am living here on the ground. I am living here in fear. I am living here in dread. So the basic tenor of the citizenry is that the military or the security forces are not doing enough. Now, but it is a fact, and we have reiterated it different times, right from the times of.
Sorry, I just want to pick up on something that you said. When you say the security forces are not doing enough, what exactly does that mean? Are you saying they should be should be more forceful in dealing with the security situation there?
No, what the people want is an end to bombing. To be honest with you, we are here right now. I am not going to mention where we are because I don't think everybody knows where BOI is yet, but there is nothing saying that I would not have a bomb placed under my car right now, after the program. It is a reality that we are facing. And Nigeria is having to deploy what resources are available to it. And one fact we all agree to is that our security forces have not inculcated or imbibed enough of the ethos of civil rights, ethos of human rights. Our security forces are known to overdo things, beat people sometimes whom they shouldn't beat, keep people detained beyond the 24 hours.
What do you say? What do you say to the conclusion that's made in this report? One of the things.
Boko Haram
sorry to interrupt, Mr. Aranta. One of the things I want to ask you is one of the conclusions in this report is that the security forces' tactics have been so brutal that they risk building up more support for Boko Haram. So in that sense, they risk backfiring. What's your response to that?
It's a vicious cycle. It's a vicious cycle. Before December last year, Nigeria did not have a national security strategy. The national security strategy of Nigeria started to be fashioned under General Owoye Azazi, the former NSA, around June. And it started being deployed around January. So right now, we are having to confront terrorism, a new thing to Nigerians, using the old methods. And like Hakim ended up saying, the old methods have been military regime methods. We do not support those methods. We do not condone those methods, but we must realize that the government is compelled to deploy the forces and the resources at its disposal at the moment. And this includes soldiers and policemen who are not as trained or as civil or as courteous as they could be or should be. I therefore agree with the report that a lot is being done that is wrong. But I do not want us to overdwell on that, first of all. Let's start from dwelling on the fact of how many Nigerians have been killed going about their normal businesses, how many children have died, have been massacred, how many bombs have gone off in churches every Sunday. People can't go to churches anymore.
All right, I just want to turn back to Dr. Hakim Yusuf.
You must weigh both things up.
All right, you made your point on that now. I just want to turn back to Dr. Hakim Yusuf and get his view on what are perhaps the root problems here. Where does all of this come from?
Thank you very much. I would start with a pointer that was made by Tony when he said that General Owoye Azazi started or was the first military, the first national security advisor that articulated a security policy for the country. It's instructive that Owoye Azazi has been removed after articulating this, a few months after. Why? Because he pointed at one of the strands of the problems. That is politics. He said the national ruling party, which is the party of the president, which is the party that is in majority control of the states in the country, are behind the Boko Haram crisis. The government responded by removing him from power, and today, as we speak, 2 senators of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, including a past governor of Borno State, which is the hotbed and center of Boko Haram, have been indicted for being sponsors of Boko Haram. Now, the root cause of this, if we remember, and Al Jazeera reported, was basically that in 2009, the head of the Jamaatul Dawat Wasuna, that is this group that is called Boko Haram, was killed extrajudicially. And because of that killing, an otherwise innocuous, even if fundamentalist group in his beliefs, which were not even mainstream, but was a peaceful group, was facing a situation where its leader was killed, and in retaliation for that, they took up arms with government. Till date, the police who killed him the police officers who killed him have not till today been brought to justice. That is one side of it. The other side is that basically we are talking about states in this country, in Nigeria, that are the poorest states in terms of development. There are too many people who are disenchanted with the Nigerian states and who can be easily recruited under the guise of religious fundamentalism
let's put that point then to Paul Lubeck, that there are deep-rooted problems in Nigeria to do with economic and social issues, and that is really contributing to a lot of this. What's your view on that?
Yes, there's several deeply structural forces driving this insurgency and rebellion. First, you have a population explosion, a demographic crisis. It's 7.4 children per woman on average in the northern Sharia states, the 12 states of the far north. In Sokoto, it's over 8. About 75 to 80% of the population lives below $1 a day on average. You have migration to the cities of poor people, Quranic students and educated people, and it only takes a small proportion of these people to be recruited into radical insurgencies. The issue is not a class issue. The issue, however, is about citizenship. It's the right of citizens to have a relationship with their political authorities who are represented by the Nigerian police. Local government has collapsed in northern Nigeria. There are no functional local governments, it is reported by Nigerian researchers. The funds going to local governments often never reach them. So in these cities, you have charismatic preachers emerging like Muhammad Yusuf. He has a following. He has conflicts with the police. The primary relationship of these unemployed youths to the government is the Nigerian police. This is a problem. Another dimension of this insurgency is that the police engage in sweeps. They put them in prison. According to this report, they're tortured. According to many reports, they're tortured, abused. And the problem is the Nigerian incarceration system, the prison system, has become the incubator of these radical members of these sects.
Let's put that
Just one more fact. This movement began in 2003. 2003, this movement began in Yobe State. It is 9 years. If you count up all of the people that security forces claim to have killed, it's much larger than anyone ever imagined. They keep recruiting new people, and the way in which the police and the security forces are abusing and torturing these people is an incubator of the movement.
All right, let's put that then to Tony Aranta, this idea that Boko Haram is feeding on the widespread disenchantment of Nigerians, and that the security forces there and their heavy-handed tactics are essentially acting as a recruiting tool for them.
Well, basically what Paul just said, everything he described about, he called them the northern states, so far as I'm concerned, describes the whole of Nigeria. We are living in poverty, in the middle of a lot of affluence. We have a rising of the poor against the rich. It's going on everywhere. The cities are being choked everywhere. What we are saying is, no matter how disenchanted you become, and I am from the Niger Delta, and the Niger Delta was very disenchanted, had very good reason, more reason to be disenchanted, and did become restive. But even in that process, as bad as what they did was, which was kidnapping people, they didn't go about indiscriminately throwing bombs into marketplaces, into worship houses, into homes, into schools. Well, having said this, I accept the fact that if you keep on letting the vicious cycle of reprisals by the security agencies and anti-reprisals by the Boko Haram and then co-reprisals, it will never stop, and it will only get worse. That is true. But we see, the good thing is, yesterday, the Boko Haram announced that they were willing to have a ceasefire. They even announced that they were willing to set up a negotiating team led by, they proposed, General Muhammadu Buhari, the former head of state of Nigeria.
Dr. Hakeem Yusuf, should the Nigerian government be
CPC.
talking to Boko Haram or engaging in some sort of dialogue despite this continuing cycle of violence?
There is no other option. Of course, the government has been under pressure from some groups who want to take a military security approach to it. And that is why it's a violent, a recurring cycle. The only approach we know for even war, full-scale war, is dialogue. And Tony has just pointed out a good example. From inception of civil rule in the country in 1999, there was a development of a restive militant group or groups in the Niger Delta. Today, because the last and continuing administration approached it with an amnesty proposal, which was a social program to sort of address the grievances of that segment of Nigeria, you find today that there is relative peace in that part of the country. And that is the way for the government to go. A continuing militarization of the north and deployment of soldiers who are actually making the situation worse will not solve the problem. A deployment of security agents who do not have any tools or training or regard for human dignity to these areas will not solve the problem. It is, like Tony said, a very welcome development that there is a remarkable shift in the demands of Boko Haram, even as we speak, where they have fingered their grievances as being the killings of their members by the security agencies under the watch and under the direction of a past governor of the state who they have mentioned and who has been linked to the
Paul
situation.
Lubbock, if we talk about amnesty for Boko Haram as some sort of a starting point for dialogue here, while that may be a good solution or a good start, how do you explain that to the victims, to the families of the innocent victims of Boko Haram's attacks?
The families need to be recognized, and their suffering needs to be recognized, and they need compensation. The important point here is there is no military solution, none. The borders are wide open. The borders of Cameroon, Niger, all of these areas give opportunities for insurgents to revive and return. We know this. There has to be a genuine dialogue and a recognition of the conditions of the cities and the impoverished youth. There has to be hope. There has to be a recovery program. One of the things I'm working on right now is an actual regional recovery program. This is possible. It is not possible to resolve this by continuing the joint task forces. The government is celebrating their success in international meetings. It is the opposite was what is occurring. Even if they kill this generation of insurgents, the social conditions are going to generate new ones. This movement differs from the Niger Delta. The Niger Delta is a relatively small population. Here you're dealing with 60 million people with the highest fertility rate in the country, with massive youths coming into the cities.
All right,
there
that's
has
going to have to be
economic development. Yeah.
That's got to be the last word. We're going to have to leave it there. But I want to thank all three of our guests in Abuja: Tony Uranta in Glasgow, Hakeem Yusuf, and in Washington, D.C., Paul Lubbock. Thanks very much for being with us. And that's it for this edition of Inside Story. Remember, if you want to send us your feedback, as always, you can email your thoughts to us at insidestory@aljazeera.net. I'm Hazem Sika. From all the team, thanks for watching. Bye for now.